Now that we are all officially distance learning leaders, Zoom has become an essential tool for connecting with our students, their parents, and even each other. While Zoom can be a great way to connect face-to-face and keep a sense of community going while school is closed, there are also some settings you should know about to keep you and your students secure in your Zoom meetings. This video will cover controlling who can share their screen, using a virtual waiting room to keep intruders out of your Zoom meetings, locking down the chat feature, removing participants from meetings in progress, disabling the audio and/or video of participants in a meeting, and putting a participant in timeout during a meeting. All of the settings you're about to see are available from zoom.us. You'll need to sign in. The quickest way is to just sign in with your Google account. And then you're going to visit the settings page. Let's take a look at some of these settings, and then we'll take a look at how they look when they're applied to a Zoom meeting. The nice thing about your settings in Zoom is that settings that you change will be shown as modified. So if you need to go back later and figure out the things that you've changed that aren't the default Zoom settings, you can just look for the items that are modified. For example, one of the first things I turned off is private chat. This is the feature that would allow people in your meetings to have kind of a sidebar chat. Now let's scroll through some of the other settings that I recommend making changes to for your classroom meetings. Okay. I checked allow the host to put an attendee on hold. So if you need to take someone who's in your meeting and move them back into the waiting room temporarily for whatever reason, this is a setting that I turned on for my meetings. And this is one of the big recommendations from Zoom for classroom meetings. They recommend making sure that only the hosts can share their screen. That way you don't have someone coming into your meeting and sharing something inappropriate on their screen without you giving them express permission to share their screen. Another setting I turned on that isn't really essential but gives you some nice participant feedback tools is nonverbal feedback. I'll show you in a minute when we do a sample meeting what those are going to look like. This is one that I didn't turn off, but if you find that your users or students are getting distracted by switching their virtual background every 15 seconds, you can opt to turn off the virtual background in your meetings. Here's another big one from Zoom. The waiting room makes sure that no one can join your meetings, particularly meetings that are already in progress, until you let them into the actual meeting. They can click a link or enter the meeting code, but they get dropped into a waiting room until you let them in, either one by one or as an entire group if you recognize everyone in your waiting room. So let's sum up the settings that we changed, and then we'll start a meeting and we can see how they affect the participant experience. We disabled private chat. We allowed the host to put attendees on hold. We set screen sharing to host only. This one's kind of a bonus, but we turned on nonverbal feedback. And we enabled the waiting room. Now let's start a meeting and we'll see how the settings we chose look in action. So here I am on my meeting screen. I can start a new meeting either with this schedule a new meeting button or the schedule a meeting button up top. You do need to click enable waiting room for that waiting room feature that we set in our settings. For whatever reason, it doesn't seem like you can set enable waiting room as a default. You do have to turn that on every time you create a new meeting. So I'm going to save my meeting and I'm going to start the meeting, and let's see what it looks like as my participants join. So you're going to notice in my Zoom meeting program that as people sign in, they get dropped into the waiting room, and it's going to notify me as new participants or students click the Zoom link or enter the meeting ID number. If I click see waiting room or manage participants, I can see who is in the waiting room. As new students join, I'll see them added to this list. On their screen, they're getting a message that they're in the meeting, but the host has to let them in. So right now their cameras are off, their microphones are off, and all they can really do is wait for me to let them into the meeting room. So let's let everyone into the meeting because I recognize everyone on this list. I could also have done this one at a time if I'm admitting students as they drop into the meeting. So let's start the video. These are those nonverbal communication options that we turned on. If our students go into there, they can do things like raise hand, and you'll see the little raise hand icon, which you can actually click so they put their hand down. If you want to ask a question for a quick vote, like does everyone understand this, they can click yes, and you'll see everyone's answer pop up in your participant window. And there are others that they can give you too. Thumbs up, thumbs down, round of applause, cup of coffee. Let's see what it looks like now with our waiting room feature if someone joins the meeting while we're already in progress. So here we are in our Zoom meeting in progress when all of a sudden someone joins the group that we don't recognize. Either a student passed the link to someone who's not in our class, or maybe the link was accidentally posted on a public web page that you didn't realize that other people could see. For whatever reason, you see someone here that you don't recognize. They get stuck in the waiting room, so they can't hear anything that's going on in your meeting. They can't see you or your students. If I did recognize them and they're just coming late, I can admit them. If not, I can click remove. And now, once I remove them, they can't join again from that same device. And if they try, they're going to get a message on their device saying that they were removed from the meeting, so they cannot join this particular meeting. So once someone has been kicked from your waiting room, they can't come back. Another handy little feature that I actually just noticed under More, you can even rename a student in terms of how they appear to you and the rest of the group. So if someone came in and their name was just showing up as iPhone or iPad or something like that, you can actually rename that student, and that'll change how they're going to appear to you and everyone else in the meeting. If you use the settings we covered in this video, you should be well on your way to having more productive Zoom sessions with more control and fewer distractions.